year, we lost Murray and Carol Berger within 2 months of each other. And when they passed, the community lost two of its biggest advocates whose contributions are legendary. Murray and Carol were married for 69 years, and they devoted their lives to the Kew Gardens community. Murray was the former president of the Kew Gardens Civic Association, and Kew Gardens Civic Association is well represented as well as the Kew Gardens community. I want to tell you this is one of the largest street meetings I've been to with so many people in the cold rain today. Woo! Murray was also former president of Kew Gardens Council for Recreation and the Arts and a member of Community Board 9. Murray was a product of the New York City public education system, graduating from Townsend Harris High School, City College of New York. In World War II, Murray served in the United States Army, stationed in North Africa and Italy, and attaining the rank of sergeant. He was also a printer and business owner. Carol Berger imprinted her unique and stellar Civic brand on the Kew Gardens community that will endure for generations to come. Carol was instrumental in getting a new wing added to PS 99, which we're standing in front of today, and her advocacy led to the creation of the Pocket Park on Austin Street as a sitting space for residents. Carol founded the Citywide Confederation of High School Parents Association and served as a former Parents Association president of PS 99 at Hillcrest High School. Together, Murray and Carol Berger made the Kew Gardens community better, and they both are and will continue to be sorely missed. They are survived by their daughter Madeline, who worked closely with my office to put today's event together, their son James, 2 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. And with that, I want to ask our Majority Leader of the United States Senate to say...
Thank you. And now I'm going to ask you to return the favor. But thank you anyway, Lynn. Okay, well, first, it's my honor to be here today and take part in this street naming. I want to thank Council Member Schulman for making this possible, the members of Community Board 9, the Kew Gardens Civic, and, of course, my dear friend who's doing such a great job in Congress, Congresswoman Grace Meng, as well as Assemblyman Hevesy. Am I leaving out any electeds? We have all the electeds, yes. Okay. And I want to express my condolences, of course, to the whole Berger family and the loss we feel. Before I get to my little remarks here, so I was a congressman in Brooklyn until 1992. And then I was redistricted to go into Brooklyn and Queens. And Queens, what a place. Brooklyn is one big place, but Queens has neighborhoods. And there were just amazing neighborhoods that were added into our district. We had the Rockaways, much of it. We had Howard Beach. We had Rego Park. We had Woodhaven. We had Briarwood, Forest Hills. And the one I was saving for last, of course, she couldn't shut up, was Glendale. And we had an office on Yellowstone Boulevard. And in fact, Glendale, our goal was to make it, have them vote for me in after 2 years as congressman, because it was a very Republican and conservative area. And the person who did it was the person who ran my office and became great friends of the Bergers, who you'll hear from soon, and that is Veronica Sullivan. But there was one neighborhood that was just special. It was sort of like a little jewel. A little council member, Melinda Katz, is here, wearing her little Melinda Katz shirt. DA, sorry. I saw that shirt and I thought it was a council shirt, but it's a DA shirt. Okay, thank you. I was a proud assemblyman for 6 years before some of you were born. But in any case, this was a beautiful jewel of a neighborhood. It was so special, with the name Kew Gardens, with the beautiful houses. It was just a unique place. And so I got to love Kew Gardens very early. And early on, as the new congressman, I got to know the Bergers and what special people they are. Because not only is this a special place architecturally and geographically, the rolling hills of the streets and everything like that. I was driving around here before I went over to the ale house just to reminisce and think about the beauty of this place. Sort of like an English neighborhood in a certain sense. And so gorgeous, so wonderful. And it had wonderful people. really special people. I don't know if the neighborhood breeds the people or the people are attracted to the neighborhood or whatever you want to say, but it was great. And at the top of the list were Carol and Murray. So first, we all express our condolences to the Berger family. Thank you, Madeline and Madeline's brother. Thank you, Tim. And I met his grandson, Jim, and I met I knew Madeline, but I didn't know Jim that well. But we even met his Carol and Murray's not great-grandchild, but talked about them here. Okay. So, it was when you got to know Kew Gardens, you couldn't avoid Carol and Murray. They were involved in this community in so many ways. Carol and Murray's living room was like the town hall of Kew Gardens. It was a place where people convened to discuss the pressing issues, figure out the problems, of course, socialize, develop a sense of community and neighborliness. I remember my first time in that living room. It was, they wanted to give us a seminar on all the problems and issues in Kew Gardens. But this was not like some tour guide. This was a structural, serious talk. And at the same time we had this talk, they were so warm and so friendly. And Carol and Murray, both in their way, in their same way, that is a Brooklyn way, they talked right at you, no bullshit. But it was so wonderful. I remember that meeting and just learning so much. I don't think I ever learned about any single neighborhood in one sitting more than I learned about Kew Gardens with Carol and Murray. They weren't interested in pageantry, not in the photo op, unlike me. They were not interested in just knowing powerful people, unlike me. But they were my kind of people. They cared about community. I am ultimately a community person. That's where I came from. That's where I got started as assemblyman. And they knew so much about it and did so much about it. So we collaborated on many, many issues together. I was reminded of a few. The Lefferts Boulevard Bridge, which they called the Ponte Vecchio of Kew Gardens. I worked with Carol and Murray over the years to repair and keep that landmark intact in the face of areas to condemn it, destroy it, etc. Of course, the annex, which was mentioned by Lynn, we worked long and hard on that and developing the annex, and of course the Leah Weinberg Early Development Center, which is right here at 99. 99 was a great school. It was one of those old-fashioned schools where people really, the teachers and everyone was so devoted to the kids and to education. It was just phenomenal place. Okay? Carol and Murray never took no for an answer, never. And when the question was about how to improve the city around them and the community around them. So it was really sad to hear the news in February. I think Veronica told me that Carol passed away and Murray didn't wait long to follow. I've had good friends like this. When one goes, the other doesn't want to live, and they go quickly thereafter. It's a sign of the trust of the relationship and the strength of the relationship. Anyway, and with them we lost two of the most stalwart advocates of neighborhoods of anywhere in New York City. I think that's a superlative, but it's accurate. Anyway, yes, Carol died, and then Murray, after 69 years, waited a month, and that was that. Because they loved each other so much and couldn't live without each other. Their connection to the community, just to give a little history, dates back to 1957. They moved into their home on 82nd Road as a young couple. Back then, Kew Gardens was a little like a small town. You may remember that. And it was a stretch for them to pay $10,000 down payment. But they were so drawn by the warmth of the house and the neighborhood, they stretched and did it, and thank God for all of us they did. And their roots started then and then became the magnificent roots of an oak tree, just embedded in the community, in the whole community. So we could spend all afternoon listing off the many ways they served Kew Gardens, but let me name a few. Carol and Murray were the heart and soul of the Kew Gardens Civic. Murray is president, chairman, executive president. Carol is secretary. Murray co-founded the Kew Garden Council for Recreation and the Arts. Carol was president of the Queens Federation of High School Parents, chairman of the Citywide Confederation of High School Parents. Both were on Community Board 9. And they, everyone who has a house here is a little wealthier, not just in the personal ways we talked about, but even in the economic ways, because they kept the neighborhood so good, the values of the houses went up and up and up. So we're all going to miss seeing them around the neighborhood. We're all going to remember them pointing out what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. But let's just say this. A street naming is very nice, and I'm so glad you're doing it, Lynn. But just knowing them, watching them, loving them is the greatest gift that we have had from the Bergers. So thank you.
So, I just want to, before I introduce the next person, I want to tell you that this is also personal for me. I ran 3 times before I got elected, and when I first ran in 2001, I went to visit the Kew Gardens Civic Association, and Laurie Berger, you have to do your homework. You have to know what you're talking about when you go meet with folks in this community, and not just, BS stuff, but you have to know exactly the details of everything you're going to talk about. And since then, they've kept my feet to the fire in doing that. And because of that, we were able to build a really strong relationship. And so I really value that. And I also, by the way, I think, so I'll ask the majority leader and Melinda, it's not often that you have a co-naming with the 2 names on it of the couple, right? No.
Very unusual.
Yeah. So, and I also want to let everyone here know that I was a co-sponsor of legislation that passed recently in the City Council where the co-namings are going to go in a database with bios on who the people are, so that when people see it, they can go and look it up. So, online, yeah, it's not up yet. We just passed the legislation, but we're working with the city to do that. Now I'm going to call up our wonderful Congresswoman Grace Meng.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, and it is such an honor to be here with the Berger family, with our Kew Gardens Civic Association family, CB9, and everyone who was impacted by the Berger family, by Carol, by Murray. In the House, we don't get to organize street renamings.
They don't get to organize very much.
They can't even elect a speaker. They're bad at math. We have a guy, but they're bad at math. But as our majority leader said, I too was one of the beneficiaries of sitting down in Carol and Murray's living room. And the way that they led, the way that they served our community with such authenticity and honesty and compassion and dedication. My district's a little smaller than our majority leader's jurisdiction, and I can't say which neighborhoods and civic leaders are amongst my favorites, although Dom did give me wine the first time I went to your civic association. Can't beat that. But it's just incredibly grateful, and I've learned so much just by watching the way that Carol and Murray served and led in our community. I'm not going to repeat all the amazing accomplishments that Lynn and Chuck already went through, but thank you, Lynn, for your efforts and for including me in today's celebration of their legacy. And what's most important is that, it is outside of a school. It's on a busy street, so that everyone, especially our younger generation who walks through these streets, will look up and be able to, now with the online database, be able to learn about who the Bergers were and how we can all be better servants because of them. Chuck and I were able to get an American flag flown over the U.S. Capitol in honor of Carol and Murray, and we wanted to present it to James and to Madeline and the family. So thank you so much.
Thank you to both of you. I also, by the way, before we get to the next speaker, I want to acknowledge that Sherry Algrado, who's the chair of Community Board 9 is here, and I want to thank her for her efforts as well. So let's give her a round of applause, please. So with that, I'm going to introduce our wonderful DA, Melinda Katz.
Formally, yeah. So, there's nothing that makes me feel quite as old as when Lynn Schoen looks at me for historical data on how many times. Yeah, well, anyway, it was very interesting, but she is correct. It is unusual to have two. It is almost as unusual as having the, third or fourth most powerful person in the entire United States of America, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, come out to a street renaming like this. It is a remarkable feat that he represents the whole country and manages still to be a local elected official, and that is much appreciated. Lynn, for the work you've done for generations, you've been around a long time as well. I had to get you back a little bit for that. But Lynn has been around a long time. And it is true, on my way over here, I was thinking, it is now my job, and I was the borough president, which I know that's why Lynn asked me. It's my job to keep the borough safe. That's what I do. And I was thinking about the numbers on the way over here. That shootings have gone down 27% citywide and 38% in Queens. And then I was thinking, well, murder went down 12% citywide and 55.8% in Queens. And in my head, I could hear Murray say, you couldn't make 60? Which I know would have been the response, and rightfully so. Murray and Carol were a great team, and the Kew Gardens Civic Association helped generations of people's lives. And with the houses and with the families and that yearly meeting that we all knew we were going to get the third degree on, right, Don? I was happy when Don was sitting there too. I was like, okay, maybe it's not so bad today. But at the end of the day, they held everyone accountable for what they did for the community. They held us accountable as elected officials. They held civic leaders accountable. And Murray and Carol were a team that you knew when they showed up at the table, it may not be the easiest meeting that you've ever had that week, but it was going to be the most truthful, and it was going to be the most effective, and it was going to get the answers we needed before we stood up from that table. And they did it day in and day out, whether it's Carol for the school and Murray for the Civic and the board. And let's not forget that he was a veteran. He fought in the Army in World War II. He went to Africa and he went to Italy and fought for this country and continued to fight when he came home. So I want to thank the family for lending them to us. It is not easy to have a civic leader as a partner or a spouse or a father or a mother. We all know that, just so you know. Okay. Are you nice to me in the remarks? I just want to know. Okay. I try to be a good kid. It is not easy to have a civic leader as a person in your family, but they managed to do it with ease and effective for both family and community. Congratulations on today. Generations will be asking who Murray and Carol were, and we'll get the privilege of letting them know. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. And I just want to say that I still go to the yearly meetings of the Kew Gardens Civic Association, and they really grill me, but it's good because that way the neighborhood knows that the representation and the answers that you're getting are actually factual, because that's very important to me, to represent this neighborhood as best that I can. And speaking of representation, I want to introduce your Assembly Member, Andrew Hevesi.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the rain. This is not an easy day to come out. I'm going to digress, talk about the Bergers in a second, but I rarely have the opportunity to say thank you both to our Congresswoman and our Senator for protecting us, particularly in today's climate. I want to say a personal thank you. I think they deserve more than a round of applause. As for the Bergers, I had one of those meetings where I was told who I am and what I need to do. And it was fantastic. You don't have a primer like that when you go into other communities. Now, I was redistricted, you'll remember, just a couple of years ago into this community, and having that tutorial on what this community needs was absolutely invaluable. And the legacy that they leave of service is something that we can all be proud of. Thank you to everybody here, particularly Lynn, for putting this together. And I got to tell you, putting it on a street corner outside of a school is perfect. Because every time we do a street naming around the community, I am proud to walk with my daughter around, and she'll see, who is this? Who is Berger? Who are these other people? And I have the opportunity to explain now. I understand with the database, but I have the opportunity to explain. This is what people, these are people who care about our community, who've been fighting for our community for decades. And the fact that it's outside of PS 99 is just a great thing. So I'm proud to be here. I am grateful to the family for allowing your parents to have that service. And with that, I'll give it back to you, Lynn. Thank you, everybody.
I want to thank Val. I want to thank my staff members, my Deputy Chief of Staff, Seth Urbiner, who put all this together today. It's not that easy, those of you who've done it, working with the Department of Transportation, getting it all done, working on all the details, getting it through the City Council. It's a lot of work. So he's been amazing at doing this. By the way, I'm Majority Leader. I just want you to know, so Tip O'Neill, who used to be the Speaker of the House, said all politics is local, and all politics is always local, not just today, but every day with Chuck Schumer. With that done, I want to ask you and Al to come up. Al Brand.
I have a bunch of remarks which will probably just repeat a lot of what people have already said. I got to know Murray and Carol when I joined the Board of Governors of the Civic Association. Thanks. I had no idea that after brief interregnum, I would become the president. The good thing about it was that I had Murray for a sounding board. Now, the good thing about it was Murray knew everybody. He knew assistant city commissioners all the way up to the United States Senate. And he was always there. It was interesting the first few years. Some of you have heard, what would Jesus do? What I got was, what does Murray think? So, as I've always said, my first few years I reigned, but he ruled. He was the president for over 25 years. He and Carol were a team, and I remember sessions in their dining room, and I'll tell you why I was in the dining room, where we discussed a whole lot of things and what positions we should take and what was happening in the neighborhood. And we were in the dining room because one thing Carol did, in addition to giving sound advice, was she made sure we got fed. And Murray was in, even though he was not the president anymore and was sort of in retirement, during the last 5 years when we struggled against the jail, he was invaluable. He set up the bank accounts, he helped us draft press releases, and they were involved in the rezoning of Kew Gardens, which some of you may know about, which helped preserve the neighborhood look. And as they said, Carol was instrumental in the annex. They were a terrific duo. Kew Gardens is much better for them. I consulted Murray on almost everything up until the day he died. And as long as he had the energy, he was willing to talk with me about it. I miss him and Carol. I'm definitely going to miss their counsel. Thank you.
Well, I'm Al Brand, and I was president of the Civic Association for a while. I'm still a member. I wanted to, much of what's been said today covers a few of the remarks that I had planned to make, but I want to tell a couple of stories. First is, my family and I moved to Kew Gardens in 1984. And one of the first things we did shortly after we arrived was we signed on to a walking tour where a gentleman was walking around Kew Gardens telling a little bit about the history. And when we got to the Berger's house, Murray and Carol opened their doors, and this whole group of strangers walked through the house to view the architectural features of the house. And that is now going to be turned over to a new family who's going to be the next generation in Kew Gardens. And we're very happy that this family, and they're here today, are appreciative of all of them. And our Kew Gardens Civic Association newsletter has been so valuable to all of us over the years. And up until the recent few years, Murray wrote most of everything that is in that newsletter. And he really had a meticulous detail for words. He was great at writing his own words, and he was very good at editing words of others. I know I got my work edited quite extensively from Murray, as well as from Carol. But the one thing that I noted when I was reviewing some of the newsletters, and I kind of want to read it because it really summarizes what's important. In the May of 1987 issue, Denny Shaman was asked to write little blurbs about each member of the Civic Association board at that time. She's here somewhere. Denny, are you here? Yeah. She's hiding behind me. And for Murray, she wrote this concluding sentence, which I believe could also be attributed to Carol, but I'm going to read it straight from the newsletter. His hobby is guarding and promoting the best interests of the Kew Gardens community with the help of all of its concerned residents, a true avocation which absorbs much of his time daily. That is absolutely true. There was never a point where Murray wasn't worried about Kew Gardens and doing something to preserve it. So the Berger family really can't, what we owe to the Berger family really can't be summed up in just a few words. And I really appreciate everyone standing behind me who did a much better job than I could of describing that history. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I want to call up Madeline Berger, and I just also want to tell you when we do these street namings, we can't do them without the family's participation and cooperation. And Madeline, thank you so much for working with us. So,
Opinionated family member.
Hello, everyone. Do you want that mic? Oh, yeah, I can have. Okay.
okay. I recently heard a George Bernard Shaw quote. It struck me that it related to Carol and Murray Berger, parents to Jim and me. Shaw said, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature, instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can." Early on, our parents let us know that we had no right to complain unless we were going to participate in change. An example, we learned regular voting was a family requirement. One day, when I was living at home after college and working in the city, I decided when I returned to the house that I was just too exhausted to go over to PS 99, only a block away, to vote in a primary election. Big mistake. When Mom heard I planned to skip the vote, I was very strongly told that if I didn't vote, I could not live at home. Dad agreed, and I think most of you know she meant business and could definitely tell when Carol meant business. So I ran to vote at the polling place before its closing, and I have not missed an election since. I hear her voice and see the evil eye. So, growing up in our house was a little different. While Jim and I were youngsters, the burning question most weeknight evenings was not, "It's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are?" It was my brother and I asking each other, "Which meeting are our parents at tonight?" We always found the answer. It was written on a napkin on the kitchen table. Even with that schedule, our parents were very present and always there for Jim and me and the other kids on the block, and we were a close family with close neighbors. A lot of our memories about childhood are of our parents discussing the latest and ongoing community-related issues or battles at the nightly dinner table and with neighbors and other community leaders. Jim and I even remember watching Mom speaking at Board of Education meetings downtown on a truly tiny black and white TV that picked up the UHF channels that broadcast these public hearings. As very young children, we did not hear the names of movie actors or of rock stars in our household. Instead, the celebrity names we heard were those of the local politicians. Arthur Katzman, Seymour Thaler, Donald Mattis. It was a long time ago. Matty Gold, Gary Hackerman, Alan Hevesy, Morty Fovman, Chuck Schumer, and a young lawyer named Mario Cuomo who was engaged to represent Kew Gardens Civic Association in one of its fights with a developer. Our parents lived as active citizens, involved parents, responsible breadwinners, and generous caregivers to several elderly family members, all at the same time. It's hard to fathom where they found the energy and hours to manage and accomplish all that they did. Some of you may even remember that in 1978, Carol, with a strong record of accomplishments and encouraged heavily by fellow parent volunteers and the KGCA, ran for the New York State Senate. This was a big deal then. It was time when men dominated local politics, and the first time also that Geraldine Ferraro ran for office. While Carol did not win, her 40% showing was so impressive, she gained respect and influence, which served the community well in the years ahead. As time went on, Carol transitioned to a behind-the-scenes role at about the same time Dad retired from ownership of a large commercial printing plant. Murray transitioned to make the Kew Gardens Civic Association and the Kew Gardens Council for the Recreation and the Arts his full-time occupation. With the help of Martin Hack, who became a close friend, Dad mastered AOL and Google well enough to become a great researcher and an avid emailer to city agencies, politicians, and neighbors about community concerns. And Mom was always there behind the scenes, advising, editing, writing, and supporting. Carol even had several letters published in the New York Times related to education and parent involvement. We all know of their high level of advocating for our neighborhood over many decades, and many of you have expressed to Jim and me missing your lively and authentic interaction with our parents. In 2020, our 95-year-old father learned to join Zoom meetings. However, after Mom died in February of this year, while he tried to valiantly persevere, Dad lost his mojo and his condition suddenly worsened. The hint to us that his final days were approaching was actually when he missed joining a KGCA board meeting via Zoom. Carol and Murray were inseparable partners in all respects. They operated from the same underlying good values, working through every issue they faced without wavering from them. And while they were two very different personalities, they were a winning combination and always forward-looking. Carol was strategic, smart, unwilling to give up without a really good fight. Murray brought the voice of calm reason, able to negotiate a resolution with a positive outcome for the community. We hope you find inspiration in our parents' story. Loyal commitment and active involvement is fulfilling. Jim and I thank you for coming today. We also very much appreciate the other Kew Gardens volunteers, political leaders, and city employees who worked together with our parents through the years to support the initiatives they became involved in through volunteering for PS 99, Russell Sage, Hillcrest, the Kew Gardens Civic Association, the Kew Gardens Council for the Recreation and the Arts, and Community Board 9. A special thanks to you, Senator, for joining us today, and thank you especially to Council Member Lynn Shulman, Congresswoman Grace Meng, Sylvia Happ of Community Board 9, who was instrumental also in arranging today, and the Kew Gardens Civic Association for arranging today's events honoring our parents, and really for recognizing a community is what its citizens make it. And with that, I want to introduce Sylvia Hack to come up and say a few words.
Just want to say that there's a Dave and July, and I don't miss them both. And there isn't a place that you could walk Ocean Gardens without seeing their handiwork. It's everywhere. And someday, well, there is a book that we did publish called Kew Gardens, Urban Village in the Big City, which was written by an architectural historian who lived here, Barry Lewis. But it was my husband, Martin Haas, and Murray, who put this incredible book together. So if you really want to know about the history and the wonder of this place, much of it belongs to Murray and Carol, then I advise you to read our book. Okay. Woo!